This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Wow, how about that? You looked up that research, huh? When you make things difficult for people, they'll get vaccinated. People are going to die if you force them to get a vaccination. If you force them to get an aspirin, if you force them to take a peanut, a certain number of people will die. You gotta give that authority it's just incredible. People make that decision with their physician. And hopefully your physician is Dr. Peter Mikolos, the great doctor. You hear him all the time on WABC. Did you know Dr. Peter Mikolos was a physician inside Rikers? Inside Rikers. Man, that is hardcore. He's board certified. He's got all the credentials in the world. Dr. Peter Mikolos, welcome. How are you, sir?
Thank you very much for letting me come on. And your show is the Truth Center in the afternoon. And you really always try to get the truth out. And there's a lot of issues around vaccines, a lot of issues related to COVID and how we handled COVID, while the rest of the world had access to oral antivirals and we didn't have access to those antivirals. So now people are talking about that now, because in order to get emergency use authorization for a vaccine, you couldn't have the option of other treatments. There was a antiviral developed in Japan called Avigan, also known as Favipiravir, and Japan, China, Russia, Vietnam, Singapore, Turkey, they all had access to oral antivirals to take early on during COVID, and that's why they fared much better than the rest of us. But vaccines, of course, are important, but those are the DNA vaccines that we got in childhood immunization, like measles, mumps, rubella, because you get lifetime immunity for those. And if you're an adult and you're wondering, am I still immune? You can actually just get a blood test. I actually did it myself last year, and I just checked for measles, mumps, rubella titers. So if you have normal or high titers, then you're protected. If they're equivocal, it's a decision you make with your doctor. And if you have no antibodies against them, as an adult, you might consider, for example, getting a vaccine against measles as a booster. But again, it's different. These RNA vaccines and RNA viruses, the problem during COVID was a new variant would come out. They'd make a vaccine. The problem is the RNA viruses mutate. By the time you got that vaccine, it didn't work anymore. Just like this year's flu vaccine only works 38% of the time because they anticipate which variant might be around next year. But a lot of times we don't get it right. But of course, we have the option of an oral antiviral. If I get the flu, I just have a home test kit, which you can buy at any CVS, Rite Aid. I always travel with the family. I'm the father of triplets. They're 29 now. But if we would travel, we would have the kit. And now with the kit, you can get a kit that tests for flu A, flu B, and for COVID. So you swab. If it's flu A or B, they have Tamiflu or osteomalvir, which is very effective when given the first 3 days.
All right, Doctor, let me jump in for a second. Forgive me, and thank you for your kind words. Look, when a guy like Fauci says what he said in the way he said it, with that kind of, that's just, no physician should be even thinking that way, let alone talking that way, right?
Yeah, the problem is that Fauci didn't actually see patients, and they had the other lady, Ms. Birch, very nice people are standing on stage, but they did not have any physicians who actually were treating and taking care of COVID patients. And they make a lot of these statements, and I think that government and I think even the leadership now should have doctors up there explaining what you can actually do. Fauci said, don't give people prednisone in the beginning. And like, for example, one hospital that I know, they were listening to what the guys in Italy were telling them, give steroids early on to block the cytokine storm. They said, don't use hydroxychloroquine. All the studies that have come out, a big national paper that reviewed all the studies around the world, showed that if you take it immediately the first 3 or 4 days, it blocks the cytokine storm. You don't die of the virus. You die from the inflammation in your lungs that makes you like self-drown. But they were telling people don't take it, but it turned out that it worked quite well. The other thing with ivermectin, it did turn out that it does not block viral replication, but in the animal model at the prestigious Pasteur Institute in France showed that it does, it's an immune modulator, and it does slow down the inflammation and cytokine storm. So that explains why some people were responding to things like ivermectin, but they said horse paste, how can you do that? And also they attacked the president when he mentioned, and they basically took words and shifted them when he said, put light in the lungs and disinfect the lungs. What he was actually quoting was a real study at Cedars-Sinai Hospital where they took near UVA light pipes. Yeah. And when people were intubated, they shot the light in the lungs, and it actually did disinfect lungs. So there was something real. It's just that, unfortunately, he didn't have any real doctors who treated patients up on the stage. So that's part of the problem. We need transparency, and we need physicians who actually treat patients to talk about these things and explain them a little bit better.
And maybe physicians, doctors should not be trying to figure out how to make disease more transmissible and more lethal. And that's what gain of function research is all about. I have White House documentation from the Obama White House. That is what...
Yeah,
what?
You're right. I can quickly explain what that is. What happens is what they want to test, if you want to test 10 different drugs against the virus, what you do is, okay, I don't have a lot of time or money, so I'm going to make the virus, I'm going to alter it so it becomes more contagious so that I can test more lab rats and animals and push through 10 different medicines. And that's what gain of function research was about. But the problem is when one of those gain of function viruses that have been altered leaks out of the lab, good luck, because viruses learn to be they transmit very quickly, and initially they kill and they're more deadly, but they mutate and eventually learn I can't keep killing my human hotel host, and that's why they become less deadly over time. And the same thing happened with the Spanish flu, and the same thing happened with COVID. They eventually learn to coexist with us more, where they become more contagious but less deadly because they need a body to live in. And viruses are interesting because they have intelligence. When they see an infected cell, they know to bypass it and jump to the next cell. And to me, that's pretty wild. That's like unbelievable that they have that capacity.
And they don't have brains, right? I mean, they're organisms, but they don't have brains. So how they figure to do that?
But they adapt and learn. We still don't fully understand it. But I did a show with John Catsimatidis about viral intelligence and some of the features, how these RNA viruses so quickly adapt. And also our gut microbiome has trillions of viruses in it because over time they were once infection, but they eventually learn not to kill us, to coexist with us. And they actually live in our gut microbiome. And some of the bacteria that used to be infections live in our gut microbiome, and they actually help make serotonin, which is the happy hormone for our mental health, and they coexist with us. So it's a fascinating field. But like you said, Dr. Fauci could have done a much, much better job for transparency and could have helped us get antivirals into this country. There's even antivirals that may potentially work against hantavirus. And also the great company Regeneron in New York, which made antibodies against COVID, they also made it for Ebola. And they actually donated to the Democratic Republic of Congo. And we need to preemptively have companies like that to make these antibiotics and make these antivirals available to us in case we have another pandemic.
All right, Dr. Peter Mikolos, do me a favor. What's the name of that beautiful new book that you wrote with your wife?
Oh, The Death of Aging. We summarized all the anti-aging literature, 330 pages around the world. And we also worked with an AI gentleman, actually, who is in Poland, who was in the Forbes 30 under 30. And any topic you put in anti-aging, any medicine, any vitamin, it'll actually, you put it into the AI and it'll pull up all the recent literature from around the world explaining it and why its benefits and any risks associated with it. And that's one of the applications that AI helps. Also, AI is helping with reading X-rays and MRIs. One study showed that it picked up pancreatic cancers earlier than the human radiologist. So there are places where AI is going to help. Also reading pathology slides, pap smear tests for women, and also electrocardiograms. So that's going to be an exciting area where AI will help.
The Death of Aging. I love the title. I love the idea because I would.
And
like
I love your show, and a lot of people where I am out here, a lot of people love your show because you always get the truth out with warmth and good humor.
Well, Dr. Peter Mikolos, it's an honor to have you, and thank you for your beautiful words, kind words toward me and your information. So best to the wife. We'll be looking for The Death of Aging, and so appreciate you, sir.
Okay, think positive and test negative, the plan of the day.
I love it. I love
Take
it.
care.
Okay, take care now. Think positive, test negative.